What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Conor McGregor profits from UFC lawsuit. Conor McGregor is almost synonymous with the UFC and the promotion's brand, and the massive star has repeatedly praised the company over the years. But as it turns out, the notorious one is going to collect a pretty sizable check from the antitrust lawsuit that was brought by several fighters. Earlier this year, it was announced that a class action lawsuit that was initiated by several ex-UFC fighters, one of which was Kung Lee, was going to be settled with a payout of approximately $335 million. The suit accused the UFC of allegedly engaging in monopolistic practices that restricted fighter compensation and eliminated competition. The UFC's legal team denied the accusations, not surprisingly. Well, as it reportedly turns out, how eligible fighters will be compensated via the settlement depends on how much they earned during the applicable years of the suit. Journalist John Nash has reported extensively about the suit, and during a recent episode of the Hey Not the Face podcast, Nash broke down what McGregor stands to earn from the settlement.
Conor McGregor made $27 million during the league class period from 2010 to 2017. We know that because the trial revealed that. So that $27 million would be about 4.85% of the total amount of earnings paid out in compensation during the league class period. So that means he'd get 4.85% of that $129 million. So about $6 million would be going to him.
Now, when you consider how stupidly rich McGregor already is at this juncture, he may not even notice a deposit for $6 million even hitting his bank account. But for most fighters, that would be a huge sum of money. Since McGregor is by all accounts the highest paid fighter in the UFC, chances are no one else is receiving that amount of money from the settlement. Up next, let's take a look at Michael Venom Page will beat Ian Garry? The odds makers have Ian Garry as the betting line favorite to beat Michael Venom Page, and the consensus in the MMA world is the Irish fighter will remain undefeated at UFC 303. But one of the folks who thinks Garry could be headed for a loss at the June 29th event is welterweight champ Leon Edwards. Although Page is one of the most unorthodox and dangerous strikers in the game, Garry has also turned heads with his stand-up skills. In addition, Garry is over 10 years younger than Venom and is considered to be one of the fastest rising commodities on the UFC roster. Well, recently, Edwards spoke with Sky Sports, and he was asked to weigh in on the Garry Page contest.
I don't know. I feel like one of these fights where it's like both guys were playing range and they're like not committing and waiting to counter punch each other, and maybe it could be one of them fights. If I had to put money on it, I'd probably favour MVP. Probably.
Yeah, that was the softest prediction ever.
Yeah, no, it is. I can't. I don't know. It'd be a good fight. I'm interested to see how it plays out. You know.
Okay, so it's not like Edwards emphatically predicted MVP will win the fight, but it is interesting to hear he's going with his countryman. The champ was also asked if he sees himself throwing hands with Garry or Page down the line.
And they both get winning, 100%. Yeah. Like for me, I don't look like number one or two. I think after that, it gets too like there's too much coming in. You know, I feel like look at who might be next after Bilal. After I beat Bilal, then who? Like that's how I look at it. I don't look at like number 10 or number 11 or 9 or yet until I start getting to that number 5. Okay, who's this? Let me see what. Then I start looking. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how Garry versus Page goes down. But if the rising star looks past the highlight reel finisher, we could see Garry take his first L. Aljamain Sterling gets called out. Aljamain Sterling is more than accustomed to being called out. After all, that happens a lot when you're someone who held the UFC title. But in the latest instance of the Funkmaster getting called to the cage, there was an interesting and dramatic twist. As you may recall, Sterling is coming off a decision victory over Calvin Kattar in what was his UFC featherweight debut. After losing the bantamweight crown to Sugar Sean O'Malley last summer, Sterling elected to make a run at 145 pounds. Well, more recently, surging featherweight Movsar Evloev claimed via social media that Sterling's ducking a fight with him in October. After all that big talk, Sterling says he won't be ready until October. I can't just sit and wait for him. I'm ready to go as early as July. I'll accept a fight with anyone who thinks that they have a chance against me. Is there really no one available who's up for the challenge? But it wasn't long before Sterling released a DM exchange he apparently had with Evloev, in which he told the undefeated fighter he'd be ready to throw hands in September. If there's one thing I hate, it's lying storytellers. I can't allow this fake bravado to go on. I can't wait to take that O. Yep, those DMs will get you every time. So clearly a bout between Sterling and Evloev would have a lot riding on it. But one of the men Evloev has defeated in the octagon, Diego Lopez, is hoping to lock up a rematch. Via X, the rising fighter posted this. Come on, bro, I called you out after my fight at UFC 300 to fight at International Fight Week. You didn't respond or show your face. Now you're here saying anyone you think can beat me. You would think Evloev would rather wait for a showdown with Sterling, given he's a former champ and they've never fought. But we shall see. Now let's dive into Conor McGregor releases footage after UFC 303 rumors. As soon as it was revealed that last Monday's press conference in Dublin was cancelled, which was supposed to feature Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler, the internet lit up with speculation about the fight. Theories fired around that Conor could be injured, or that some sort of incident or legal issue could be punting the fight. Others questioned if maybe it was the notorious one playing games with the UFC, amidst reported contract negotiations. Well, since then, McGregor has shared footage of him training, which one could argue is proof that the former champ is not injured, or at least is not injured severely enough to stop training. In addition, McGregor also posted a picture of him sitting in a chair, smiling from ear to ear. Is the brash fighter reminding the UFC of just how massive of a draw he is? Or just poking fun at all the wild speculation regarding why the presser was cancelled? It's kind of hard to say, but as this video is being produced, McGregor vs. Chandler is still headlining the June 29th UFC 302 card, which certainly is trending towards a massive fight. Luke Rockhold fires back at Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland is used to drawing fire for some of the bold and/or controversial statements he routinely makes, but there seems to be a new trend unfolding when it comes to the former middleweight champ, and that's people claiming Strickland's bark is louder than his bite. Case in point, recently, Luke Rockhold spoke with the Schmo, who, it's worth noting, has interviewed Strickland plenty of times. When Rockhold was asked why he has beef with his fellow former UFC champ, he didn't hold back.
I'm not a fan. You a fan? He puts on the most boring fights of all time. He's a fake. He's a fraud. I think he's acting up there. I heard he's got social media managers telling him what to do and telling him what to say. And yeah, just try to be a little more real, boy.
The 39-year-old Rockhold, who probably has never been accused of being shy either, didn't stop there.
Acts like he's like, oh, can go to the death. He puts on his hillbilly right-wing bogan attitude when he's really just a you ain't gonna fight to the death. You go out there and you put it on the line the last like 5 seconds of every fight, and you sit there and you walk around like a stupid nutcracker, kicking and punching like an.
It'll be interesting to see how Strickland responds, and if he tips his hat to the nutcracker line. But as noted, Rockhold isn't the only person who's drawing attention to the fact that Strickland isn't a finisher of the Alex Pereira variety. Could we see Rockhold and Strickland throwing hands in the octagon? It seems pretty unlikely at this juncture. Rockhold is coming off a KO while competing for karate combat, but he hasn't won an MMA fight since 2017. Islam Makhachev breaks silence on Dustin Poirier altercation. The build-up between Islam Makhachev and Dustin Poirier ahead of UFC 302 was pretty respectful, and it didn't really feature too much heat until after the pre-fight presser. As the fighters squared off for cameras, it was clear things were being said, which didn't sit too well with Islam. It was subsequently reported that Poirier had called Makhachev a mother effer, not once, but twice. The Diamond did so while not realizing just how serious and offensive of a term that is in Makhachev's culture. Well, after a victorious Makhachev returned back to Russia, he was asked about Poirier's insult. The champ proceeded to explain that in America, the use of that term may be an insult, but it's not exactly a forbidden term like it may be elsewhere. He wasn't aggressive. He used an American slang at the press conference. They don't put any meaning into it. Poirier is a very respectful man. He came up to me after weigh-ins to explain that he didn't mean anything bad. He approached me in the cage as well. He asked my manager to try and explain to me that the word does not have a bad meaning. And that would help explain why, following Makhachev's win, he and Poirier seem to be getting along just fine. And if you followed Poirier's career, you know he's not exactly known for crossing the line with trash talk. And now, let's discuss Sean O'Malley breaks silence on his next UFC fight. For weeks, the talk has been that Sean O'Malley is going to fight Merab Dvalishvili next, even though Sugar has talked for a bout with featherweight champ Ilia Topuria. After all, the UFC would have a tough time explaining why Dvalishvili has been passed over for a title shot given he's won 10 straight fights. Well, not only is it indeed looking like O'Malley is going to battle Dvalishvili next, it sounds like it could go down in September or December. While talking to the Mac Life recently, the Bantamweight King said this.
Yeah, I mean, they told me they'll know at the end of the month what date. I'm still kind of hoping for the Sphere, but if it's December, that's fine with me. Vegas, I'd like it to be in Vegas regardless. So.
In addition, longtime MMA journalist Damon Martin recently reported out, just spoke to the UFC champ Sean O'Malley. He says he's still waiting on timing for the fight with Merab Dvalishvili, but he believes it'll either be in September at the Sphere or in December at the year-end card expected in Las Vegas. So that's another big fight the UFC can bank on for its Q3 or Q4 schedule. Will Sugar head into 2025 still holding the bantamweight belt? Michael Chandler breaks silence on UFC 303 after it was speculated this week that the fight could be canceled. Here's what Chandler had to say.
I think from a sheer physicality standpoint, from a skill set standpoint, there's no way that I should lose to Conor McGregor. I'm better than him in every way. Aside from the puncher's chance, I beat him 10 times out of 10. With that being said, I do believe that Conor shows up. Conor shows up under the bright lights. He lives for these moments. But I do believe that there's two scenarios here, that Conor comes back and is successful and completes the greatest comeback in combat sports history, or I go out there and I absolutely dismantle him, and it's the last time that we ever see Conor McGregor compete inside of an octagon. So I think I don't just get my hand raised, I don't just win, I think I put on a masterful performance, and I finally put some of the last brush strokes on this masterpiece that I've been painting for the last 24 years of hand-to-hand combat, and it had to happen this way.
The UFC released a promo video last night, which is a good sign that the fight is still on between Chandler and McGregor. Alex Pereira gets pulled over by the police. The Australian police pulled over Alex, and it seems they just wanted to take a picture with him. Here's the clip. Top comments. What the F was Dana talking about? Man United alone have about 600 million fan bases around the world. How could that stupid slap competition beat those numbers? I mean, I don't like either Helen or Nina, but Helen was taking shots at her a couple of months ago, and Nina exposed her for lying. I really don't care about anything but UFC fighters either way. Best hands in the UFC. Gets knocked out by Usman, who's not known for having hands. What a comedian. Nina's whole shtick got old fast. I still can't believe how Tank has aged. Not in a bad way, but he looks like a retired science teacher now.